the recording. I'm charging. Awesome. And just a shout out to everyone here. I'm actually working only on one screen today because my second screen is not working. So I have my other computer to my left of me that will be able to see those lecture questions today, but I might be a little bit delayed there. So I apologize if I do miss anyone's question today. But feel free again to still post in that channel. I'll definitely be able to see it. I'm going to share my screen here. Go. Start that. Perfect. Just minimize all that. Anybody know what movie this is from?
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Exactly right. Very good. Brownie points. What is it actually from?
I just know Chris Farley couldn't say the
Good
movie.
question. I think it's Saturday Night Live.
Black Sheep.
Might be SNL. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking either Tommy Boy
Tommy
or
Boy.
Black Sheep.
Is it Tommy Boy? Okay.
I don't know.
I feel like I've seen it before and I can't place it. So I'm just seeing if anybody actually knows it.
Is that
I thought it was Animal House.
No.
No, Animal House would have been 70s.
Yeah,
That would be
that's Belushi.
Belushi.
It's Belushi. Okay.
Mhm.
You can't tell I'm bad at my
Beverly
movies.
Hills Ninja.
Oh
Those are
God.
really good. Those are really good.
What are we at here? 85? Perfect. All right. Well, everybody, what was that? Well, we're trying to place this GIF right now. So if you have any guesses, feel free. I was also going to ask too, can you guys see, I actually don't know on the other side, can you see the participants' screen that's on the screen right now? Or is Zoom hiding that?
We
I
cannot
just
see
see
it.
you.
Okay, just see. Okay, you shouldn't be seeing me. You should also see my screen right now too. You should see John Belushi looking very surprised. Okay, perfect.
Chris Farley.
That's
Is
Chris
it Chris
Farley.
Farley? It's Chris. See, I told you. I'm
It's Chris
terrible at
Farley.
actors.
It's Chris Farley.
Okay, Chris Farley. All right.
I
No,
think
I'm
that's
sorry,
Tommy
sorry.
Boy too.
Tommy Boy? Okay,
Mhm.
I've heard Tommy Boy a few times. I'm putting the sticker or label Tommy Boy on that one. Oh, all right. Let's see here. We're all good. All right, and why? You said Chris Farley, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm a child. Sorry. I'm gonna write that down. Anyway, why Chris Farley's looking surprised here is that we have 3 big topics to go over today. We have scope, primitives, and exceptions. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and mute everybody just for the time being, because don't worry, you're gonna be talking to me here soon. So let's go ahead and hop into this. Again, I'm only using one screen here, so sorry if things aren't as fluid as they usually are, since I usually have 1 or 2 screens with me. But let's see if I can do this for the first time ever with one screen. So hopping into it, as always, we have announcements. So that being the case, first things first here is that start looking at assignment number 3. I know we just finished assignment number 2. Luckily, it wasn't that cutoff date. I know some of you might still be out there working on it. Make sure you do get that assignment 2 across the line as soon as you possibly can. Assignment 3 is called Mars Rover. And it is or has been known to be a little bit longer of an assignment and maybe have more challenging parts to it. It doesn't make it necessarily difficult per se, but it does definitely have some new concepts in there that sometimes can be troublesome for some individuals. So all I got to say is start looking at assignment 3 as soon as you possibly can. Just read over it, see what concepts are coming our way, and just make sure that at least we have an understanding about what we should look out for during lecture. Continuing on, we're not going to have any studio review tonight. If you've already looked at the studio, it's more about conversation. We're going to be talking about errors and exceptions today. So go ahead and just take that extra time to talk with your small groups about errors, explore them. And we're also going to be exploring some errors here tonight too. So there will be no studio review tonight, no studio review tonight. So moving on, also, so I've had a few students here actually reach out to me and talk to me about just necessarily how they're feeling about the class, which I really, really do love, whether that be positive or any kind of creative criticism back to me about what you all like to see when I am actually teaching. Or if something, a concept or something has been more glazed over than you would like, maybe you want to go more into depth about some things that maybe I haven't even talked about. Regardless, please provide that feedback as much as you can want or as much as you can, so I know how to make this lecture a little bit more tailored towards you or just the group in general. So I'm always looking for the best way to continuing to improve my lectures. So please just reach out to me directly. Let me know what I can do to be better. I'm always looking how to become a little bit better version of myself all the time. So that is all the announcements I have here. Oh, let me go. I think I should go to the right. There we go. Perfect. So that is all I have here. So if there's no other additional questions, feel free to put those on the lecture questions channel. I'm going to get us started with class here. Give it a few seconds. All right. Then let's hop into it here. Okay, so one of the things I did get back from a few students is that during assignment 1, assignment 2, or even during the studios, you might have already noticed that coders have a certain way of phrasing questions or phrasing what they actually want, whether that be a concept that we're learning or what we should actually code during the assignments of the studios. I'm just going to call that some coder jib jab today. And we're going to go through just an example of one of these and see exactly what we should do here. This might be a little familiar of something that we were working on before in assignment 1, but I changed it, of course, to keep up with our theme of dogs and cats. So we're going to walk through this one together. So this question asks, ask for the dog's name. Define a variable called dog name with an initial value of empty string. So my question to all of you is, 1 second. I always have to go find it. Awesome, awesome. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and walk through this. So we're gonna start with the first thing. Tell me what we should do for asking the dog's name. Again, we're gonna start from the left, move to the right, see what this actually wants us to do. So how do we ask for the dog's name? What do we actually need to use to do this? Who can tell me?
Readline sync.
Readline sync, very good. We're gonna bring in that const input equals require readline sync. This is our first thing. When we have to ask the user for input, we need to use that readline sync. Now, what's the second thing we need to do? We brought in that package, but what else do we need to do with this input or this readline sync? What's the next thing?
You need to define the variable so that you can put the dog's name into that variable.
Yeah.
Very good. So pretend that we actually define that variable because we're not to that part of the question just yet. What would we use? We'd say input what?
Dot question.
Dot question.
Dot question. Very good. We're going to start with this first. So input dot question. What is the dog's name? Very good. So now that we have the two pieces for asking the dog's name, let's move on with the question. It then says define a variable called dog's name. So obviously, what should we do here?
Let dog name.
We're going to do a let dog name. We're not going to do const here because it says with an initial value of empty string. That's one big call out there. So actually, let's move on there. We're going to say let dog name, and then it says initial value of empty string. So what do we put here when it says that?
Equals
quotations.
Quotations.
Very good. We do equals close quotations. So we, again, wanted to use let here because this question actually gave us that hint there. It says initial value of empty string. When they usually say initial value, they're typically indicating it's going to change down the line. Therefore, we should definitely have a let there. Finally, this is one part of the question that wasn't included, but it's the one part we need to essentially make the connection that that's what they want. It said we needed to declare dog name here, but it never said we actually needed to save that input.question into dog name. Again, that's our own connection we have to make. So what we say here is dog name equal input.question. So part of these instructions, sometimes we'll not have everything you need to do. We have to make those associations. So it said it wanted to create dog name with initial value of empty string, but also asked to ask for the dog's name. Therefore, my indication was that we need to use dog name equals input.question. So that's how we would complete this portion. Let's keep moving on with some coder jib jab. Say now, with the same exact code that we just coded, when the user types Stark, save bark to a new variable and print it out to the screen. Reading this, who can tell me what we need to do or start with?
If
Then
Very good. We need to start with an if statement. Very good. What's this if statement going to look like?
dog name equals Stark console log. No, don't console.
Very good. Well, let's stop here. Right now for this conditional, remember our conditional should always be 3 equal signs that we're trying to compare two sides. Remember, 1 equal sign is when we need to assign a value to a variable. It should never be used in a conditional. 3 equal signs. Okay, so now we actually have this if statement built. So what should we do now? What does our direction say we need to do next?
Console.log or
Let's read our instructions very carefully.
Say bark to
it's
the
saying
variable.
It's saying to
Save the new variable.
Exactly. We need to say bark to a new variable and then print it out to the string. This is also one thing I really wanted to call out here. This is one thing I also wanted to call out here is that sometimes these directions might not be straightforward, or you might question, why am I doing it this way? This is just extra work. These are definitely still out in the assignments. Make sure we read these very carefully. One, because this might be indicating something we'll have to do in a future part, or they want us to do it for practice. So make sure we definitely read our instructions very carefully, because though let message equals bark just seems redundant or unnecessary, for whatever reason, the assignment might want it there so we can use it later. So that's a call out I wanted to do on this question in particular. All right. Any questions about the last 2 examples that we just did before we move on? All right. And let's do one more coder jib jab. This one might resonate with a lot of you here. So create a transform treats function that takes an old treats object and returns a new treat object. This might look very, very familiar. So with these directions, let's go ahead and actually bring in those 2 objects that we need to do. So here's the old treats object. We're gonna have Stark on the left-hand side as our key, Stark and Bella as the key. And then on the right-hand side, we have the associated arrays, ball and bone for Stark, and rope for Bella. We want to transform it. We want to transform it into this new treat object here with ball on the left and the dog associated with that treat on the right-hand side, outside of the array. So who can tell me what we should start with for this example?
Function.
Very good. We'll start with function, and we'll call it transform treats since that's what it says in the instructions. And then what? What do we need to include?
Old treat object.
Old treat object.
We need to take in a parameter called old treat object. Very good. So let's go ahead and hop over to Replit real quick and write this in. I'm gonna say function transform treat, and we said old treat object. There we go. All right. So now the fun part begins. What are we going to do next? What should we start with here? What do we know we're going to have to do?
You're creating a variable just to assign the new object to.
No, you had it. Keep going, Jason.
Yeah, you're creating a new empty variable, and then after that, you're creating a for-in loop, I believe.
So yeah, we can do definitely a for-in loop as well. So let's start with what you first said. Let new treat object equal, and then we need to create a blank slate or a blank object here. So what we do is that we place those empty curly brackets in there as well. I just wanted to call that out, is that this is how we start with a blank object. So what we can do, we say let new treat object equal open close curly brackets. There we go. Now I like what you said there, is that we can also use the for-in loop. If we're not familiar with the for-in loop, because we haven't gone over that necessarily in class, we're gonna do actually something a little different in this example. Again, there's a million ways to code one single thing. So if you went with the for loop for this, feel free to keep going with that. I'm going to show you how to do it with just a simple, typical for loop. The next thing we're going to do is that once we have the new treats object created, we actually need to get all of the keys from the old treats object so we can loop through those. So how we get the keys out of that old treats object is that we use this function called object.keys. This grabs all of those keys from the old object, and we're going to save them into a new variable called old object keys. Now with this, what I want to do now is I want to loop through each of the keys, and I'm going to use those keys to unlock all of the values within the arrays. So let's go ahead and build that. First, I'm going to go ahead and go over to our replit here and say, let's old treats, what do I call that? Old object keys, obj keys equal, and what I said again was I use the capital O object and then keys. Again, what this is going to do is it's actually going to return all of the keys that are in my old treat object. If you're wondering what that looks like, let's go up here and just go ahead and console log that real quick. So it's a console log object.keys old treats object. There we go. We can run that. Come on, yep, there we go. And we see that Stark and Bella are returned. Stark and Bella are returned again because Stark and Bella are the keys in this object. So that's why we're using this. Now let's see what we're actually going to do with this. Once we have all the once we have all the old object keys, again, what we have to do is loop through each of those keys to unlock all of the values inside of the arrays. So what we're going to do is loop through it with a for loop. We say let I equal 0, I less than old object keys dot length I plus plus. Again, this is going to iterate through every single one of those keys. So once we have this for loop built, we can now unlock the old object values for that particular key. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. We're going to come over here. We're going to say for let I equal 0, I less than old object keys dot length, and then I plus plus. There we go. And what did I call that? Let's old object value equal, and then my old object treats. So what I'm going to do in here is now use the keys at the index I to unlock the value at that particular index. So what I say is that in here, I want to get my old object keys at index I. So what this is going to do is actually going to get me that value. If you don't believe me, I'm going to go ahead and console log our old object value so we can actually see this. I'm going to run the function down here. So I'm going to say is transform treats and then pass in old treats object. Perfect. Make sure all that's actually right and Replit's not being just weird. I think Replit's just being weird. There we go. So now what we see on the right-hand side are both the arrays associated with those particular keys. Again, ball and bone being towards Stark and rope being for Bella. So now we're unlocking those values. So now the next thing is that we have to iterate over each of these two arrays and rebuild our object with them, these being the keys. So let's go ahead and see how we do that. Now that we have those values there that are again locked in an array, what do we typically do with an array? Well, we loop over them, or we iterate over them, again, using a for loop. So I'm going to say for, in this case, use J for this index, since it's a for loop within a for loop. And I'm going to iterate over each of those object values up to the length. Let's go and build this for loop in here now. It's to say for let J equal 0, J less than old object value dot length, because again, that's going to be an array, so J plus plus. And there we go. So let's go ahead now and console log what our old object value at index J is going to be. And let's see what we get here. We'll run this again. And now we actually see we're getting back ball, bone, and rope, which again, in our new treats object are going to be the keys, all console logged to my right here in the console. So I know that all my keys now are actually there, they're accessible. So now I know I can start setting this new treats object to whatever those values were as the keys. Again, it's kind of weird with the terminology here because we're truly flipping the terminology and kind of flipping the values and the keys on its head, which makes this a very challenging algorithm to write. So let's go back over here and we're going to add that in. We said we wanted to take these values and make them the keys. So what we do is we say new treats object, And then we have to get the value out at j equals our old object keys at I. The right-hand side here says old object keys at I. Remember that this is going to be Bella or Stark depending on the I's index. So this is actually going to help us flip it. So what I'm going to do here is do exactly what we just said. We're going to start building our new object now. So we say new treat object. And now I have to get my key, which is going to be in the old object value here. Right? Yeah, old object value, J, it trips me up all the time. Okay, equals, and now we have to actually get the new value for this new key in our new treats object. That value, again, will be the name of the dog. That will be in the old keys, old object keys at index I. There we go. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and console log our new object after all the for loops have ran. Save that. All right, moment of truth. What's going to happen here? And it looks like our values and our keys have now been flipped and unlocked out of that array. So we're doing pretty darn good. Now, the one last thing it says is that it needs to return new treats object. We all know how we return something. We use that keyword return. So, and I can't see if that actually went up or not. It did. So we use return, and then we say return new treats object. Come back over here. I'm going to put that in there. Return new treats object. Finally, if we return something, it is brought out of the function after it hits this line 26. So we need to catch it on the other end of this function here when we actually call it on line 29. So we say let my new object equal this. I'm going to console log it then on the line below. My new object. Awesome. Run that, and it's returning properly. So as like I said before, this is probably a little familiar to something that we maybe have all gotten ourselves into here recently. So hopefully this does shed a little bit of light on one of the approaches you could take and the different things we could use to actually complete this algorithm. So that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and leave it open to any questions here for a half second. Okay, so Christopher, what was the type? I think that was already answered. Yeah, what was the type of the old object keys? It is going to be an array. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah, Amy.
I don't like it how the assignment uses a word that's triggering to me. It uses the word for a setting on a dryer, and I'd prefer to use typical. And I saw in the student grading thing that it did not use the word in the auto grader. So can I change it to typical?
If that makes you more comfortable, feel free.
Okay, thank you.
Also, yeah, if any of that is yeah, if you feel triggered in any way, feel free to reach out to Clark, and he'll definitely accommodate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Ethan, does object.keys save the keys as an array? Yes, it passes back the keys as an array that we would save into, as we see here, old object keys. So that is correct. Katie, is this supposed to be better than doing a for in loop? No, I would say the for in loop is definitely a better approach here. I just know we haven't talked about the for in loop, so that's why I used just a typical for loop for iteration. If you are using the for in loop, feel free to do that because it actually saves you a few steps if you haven't noticed. If you do the for in loop, you don't have to actually do this object.keys, I believe. No, I might have to, I always forget. So, but I would recommend the for in loop for sure. Awesome questions, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions here? Can you show it in a for in loop? Yes. Let's go ahead and see that real quick. So we're at, okay. I have to remind myself the for ins. Give me a second here. Okay, so for in loop, we're not going to use this anymore. What I'm going to do is come in here. For and I always forget. Let me make sure I'm not going to be messing this up. Actually, yeah, that's not bad. There we go. So we can just use key in old treat object. What that does is it passes us back the keys. We see Stark and Bella. Again, just like before, we can use that key to unlock what's actually in our array. So what we can do is that we can say for let value in, let's see, old treat object at the key. See if that gives us our value here. Dot value. There we go. Constant like that. That gives us our index. So that's what we can use. So, well, technically, yeah, we don't want to, we just want to do that with the keys. So we'll just do a typical for loop here. Let I equal 0, I less than old treat object at that key. And we know that at that key, it is going to be an array. So we say dot length, then I++. I would not recommend doing a for in loop and a for in loop, though it gives us back our indexes. That is not the proper way we should be doing this. So I also do not do for in loops very often in my day job. So if you can't tell, I have to reload them real quick. So old treat objects at key and at I, that should be giving us our value now. Let's make sure. There we go. There's all those values that we need. So what we got to do now is a new treat object at our key, which will be this friendly folk. Put that in there. Equals our value, which is going to be the key. So we do that. Run that. And moment of truth. We have now successfully flipped it once again using that for in loop and a typical for loop with inside of it. So hopefully this helps. Fingers crossed. Everybody happy? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I can't actually see everybody. Somewhat. Kind of like, a little bit. Okay. Nobody seems too happy today. Wake up, everybody. Jeez. It's Thursday. What is that? Yeah, like I said, Friday Junior. Friday's tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. So excited. All right, that is our for loop. With that being said, I am going to continue on. Christopher, I hope that did help. All right, let's go ahead and keep on trekking on here. Cool. All right. So actually, no, I am sorry. I need your input. See, this is why I need to use 2 screens. All right. So will it print? Let's bring in some code. Just yell at me, yes or no. Will our message hello print with this code that we see here? How it is written? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Look at it a little bit closer. Will hello print to the screen?
Yes, it will.
It will, absolutely. Hello is up here and our console log's down there. It will definitely print. It's all within that same line there. So yes, it definitely will print. How about if we move our hello message here?
No.
No.
No, because it's inside.
It's inside.
Very good. Exactly. It's inside that if statement. It is not in the same line with that console.log. So absolutely right. How about if we moved it right here?
No, it still
No.
won't. It's an option.
Very good. It's still no. It's not in that same line as the console log. If we got down to the console log, we would have no idea what you're talking about with this message. This being said, we just did something essentially that we've already know exists, but we're actually going to put a word to it. What happened here is that the if statement, again, what happens in those curly brackets stays in those curly brackets. So the second that the if statement was done, message would just disappear. The concept of message is completely gone. So that means by the time, because we're going sequentially, down to console.log, message doesn't exist anymore. The computer's forgotten about it, so it has no idea what you're talking about and won't print out anything. Actually, we'll get an error that's undefined. What happened is that it was not contained in the exact same box or lines of code that the console log was. if we see this with the for loop and the if statement, they're also contained in their own boxes within this. So these boxes that we're looking at here is essentially called what we are now perceiving as a thing called scope. The scope of the entire program has multiple smaller scopes within it, such as the scope between the curly brackets of the for loop, the curly brackets of the if statement, and the curly brackets of the if statement below that. Inside of these boxes, remember, once you get outside of these boxes, the things that were contained inside of them are forgotten. So let's go ahead and explore a little bit more about this scope. So if we bring back some more code, here we changed it up a little bit. We have two functions, myfunc and myfunc2, and we're calling to myfunc. So if we do this, will message actually print out? Oh, I see some puzzled faces. Will it?
No.
It actually will. Message is actually outside of the curly brackets of myfunc. Myfunc has inner curly brackets. So taking a look at this, inside these curly brackets is a local scope. Inside these curly brackets, whatever happens in there and anything outside of them in the larger scope of things is remembered in that function. Why hello is printed out to the screen is because it's contained in the bigger box, aka the global scope. This global scope is accessible by all of the other scopes.
Shenanigans.
So think of a box within a box within a box. The smallest box, like once we take that box out of the other boxes or whatever, all that content is gone. But everything in the bigger boxes are still there. That's how scope is. The inner child can access anything in the other parent's scopes. So it builds in on itself, and anything in the smallest scope can see everything outside of it.
Put it
That's
in
why.
stepchild language.
Say that again.
I said you put it in biological and stepchild language.
Hopefully that helps. But yeah, this is how we exactly talk about scope here, is that we're just boxing things up. But once that smaller box is taken out, it's forgotten about, because what happens in those curly brackets stays in those curly brackets, Las Vegas style. So let's keep going on. Oh, let's go back here. We're actually going to see this in action. Forgot about that. So we're going to come back over here to our functions. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out real quick. And like we said, we're going to do our message. So we said let message equal hello. And like we said, we made a function here. So function myfunc, func. And what we did was console log this hello, or this message. And of course, what do we have to do if we want a function to run? We have to call it. So we say myfunc, and we call it with those parentheses. We run it, and we should get back a hello. Awesome. But if down here we put in an if statement where I have to get the dog's name, let dog name equals Stark. If statement dog name equals Stark. And we say our message in there, we're again just messing with scopes here. We now see that this let message is in its own inner scope while we're trying to call to it out here, outside of its local scope. So if we run this, we're actually going to get a reference error. Message is not defined. I'm sure that most of us have seen this error before. When you see this, it means message is not accessible in that scope. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to ask anyone if they have any questions about local scope and global scope. Did the myfunc in the slideshow have a param? It did, but we just didn't use param for anything. I just put it in there for an example. Yeah, param was not used anywhere in that example. I apologize for any confusion with that. Why do we not use var in this class? Var is actually more of a deprecated version of creating variables. Let and const are the ES6 standard, while the var is ES5 and prior. So I believe we had that question before in class a while back, and my response to that would be, would you rather watch TV on a tube TV or a flat screen TV, where the tube TV is the var and the let and the const are the flat screen TV. So var is technically still accepted, though it is very much recommended against.
Hey. No.
All right, I see one more person typing. Several people are typing. So I'm going to give it a second here. Can you still perform variable hoisting without var? Ryan, yeah, Ashton, you'll see a lot of people, especially in older posts, using var. Again, it's just legacy stuff. You can sub out var for let and nothing will happen. They're very much synonymous. It's just that let is more recommended. Ryan, can you go ahead and tell me a little bit more about your question? Are you talking about shadowing there, or what exactly? If you're able to talk, otherwise we'll have to move on. Okay, Ryan, if you want, feel free to elaborate a little bit more on that, and I'm happy to answer that. Okay, there we go. Amy, if readline sync isn't working in VS Code, you're gonna have to take a look at your npm packages and make sure that it's actually installed. So run npmi with readline sync in there, and that might be able to help you. But
it says something about converting it from the common JS to the ES6, which I don't know what to do for that.
Okay, so we're not in VS Code just yet. So I would ask your TF or TA tonight, definitely,
Okay.
and see if they can help you out.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, I'm gonna have to dive into that a little bit more. I don't exactly have the answer to your question. In 5.2.2, it states that we can use var to raise a variable to the top of the scope to use it before it is declared. Yeah, if we have time at the end of class, I'm happy to go back to that. That's a little interesting. I might directly message you and see exactly what the context of that part of the thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I never heard it being used like that. Okay, let's keep moving forward here. Everybody remember their data types? Who remembers data types, right? It's like, what was that, class 1, I think? Oh, by the way, it's lecture 10. Happy lecture 10. We're in double digits now. Just think about that. 9 classes ago, we were talking about data types, and guess what? It's here to haunt us once again. So let's go ahead and just talk about our data types really quick. If I was giving you Stark, what kind of data type is this?
String.
Very good. String. How about 55?
Number.
Very good. How about true?
Boolean.
Very good. Remember this? We didn't even know what a Boolean was. The only thing we were scared of that only a few weeks ago. You are doing fantastic. Awesome. How about this one?
Array.
Array.
I love it. I love it. And I'm happy everyone's finally talking to me. Welcome back. And then now, how about this one?
Object.
Object. Very good. So these are right now the data types we actually have to these are the data types that we've been working with for quite some time. Actually, object is relatively new, isn't it? But what I wanted to do is go over exactly what are the differences. Go away, screen. Thank you. What are the differences between the string number and Boolean in the array and the array and object? So let's go ahead and take a look at string number and Boolean. What do we see that's different between these three data types than the 2 below it? Well, one thing we can really identify is that Stark, 55, and true are single values. We use a single value inside of a string number and Boolean. You can only hold one value, while the ones down here, array and object, actually hold multiple values. This is a little different, and it's exactly like, okay, so what separates these two? And that's our new concept we get to learn today. The ones that hold single values are something that we refer to them as primitives. Primitives are the basic building blocks of our code. They essentially hold the values of different types right there and then. It holds a single value, that's it. while the ones that can hold multiple values are referred to as object types. We'll learn a little bit more about object types as we move forward, but an array can hold multiple values, multiple primitives inside of it, or even more object types. Well, an object also can. But everything always builds off of these primitive types. So why exactly do we even care that some are primitives and some are object types? Well, in general, we need to know exactly what are our building blocks of code so we know where to begin and how everything is constructed. It gives us a better mentality about how everything actually works inside of our code. So it's really good to know that string, number, and Boolean are primitive types, while the array and object and a few other things we'll be learning in the future are referred to as the object types. So we'll also be learning more about primitives and why they're so special going into the future. So I really just wanted to bring this up here. But every time we talk about data types, for some reason, I always have to introduce you to somebody new. So let's go ahead and introduce you to a new friend. Maybe not. Did I just not do that slide then right there? Okay. Give me 1 second. Did I mess up my slides? Should have. Did it delete or something? Pause share. Give me a second. You don't see anything. There we go. Oh no, it got deleted. Who deleted my slide? I probably deleted my slide. Oh no. Okay, well, we're gonna be doing this the old-fashioned way. You get to just hear me talk about it then. You don't get to see any fancy animations and all that. Resume share. Let's go back to here. So let's go ahead and introduce you to 2 new data types that I had some awesome animations that were gonna blow your mind, but now we don't have them. So let's go over here and talk about them. 2 new ones, and they're not really new. We've seen these before, talked about it. But we know that in coding, there is actually terminology for nothingness, the absence of something. If something is not set, we have words for that. The first one I want to talk about is let my data type, we're going to just define that. The first data type is undefined. Undefined means that a variable has not had a value assigned to it. It is a very important data type, and you will see it quite often. If you see undefined, it means that nothing has ever been assigned to this variable. The second one of nothingness that I want to introduce you to, so I'm going to say let my data type 2 equal null. Null is also another way of saying nothingness. But why is JavaScript so negative that we need to say nothingness in 2 different forms? Well, because they are a little bit different. Like we said, undefined means that this variable has never been assigned anything, but null means that it is assigned something, it's assigned nothing. So null is not technically unassigned, it just means that there's nothing in here. That's the difference between the 2. So undefined means never been assigned, null means I know nothing's in there, and I want to let you know that. So these are your 2 new data types, undefined and null. Again, you've seen these before, and hopefully it's nothing too new. We've seen at least undefined. So that is what I want to go over right now. And so I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for any kind of questions before we continue on here. So I'm gonna go back to this. Any questions on these data types here? Feel free to shout them out.
Will we ever write it like that? Let my data type equal undefined? Because I've seen it like that with null, but will we ever use it like that with undefined?
Are you talking about this line right here?
Yes, line 57.
So the question was, will you ever see this out in the wild?
Yeah, like with written like that, let my data type equal undefined. Because I've seen I've seen an example where it was like let this equal null, but I don't think I've seen one say let this variable equal undefined yet. Will it be like that, or will we write it like that?
So launch code, I think, typically tends to stay towards the null side, but in my own practice, I see actually equals undefined more often. You'll see them very much interchanged, just because undefined is more popular, and that's what JavaScript tends to go towards. But you can essentially think of them as almost interchangeable. But if the assignment or the exercise or studio uses null, I would say stick with null. So read over the code, see what they go with, and if they tend to stay more towards null, stick towards null. So yeah, the answer, it would be, I say, more around preference than having a true right or wrong kind of answer for that one. But technically null would be the correct choice in here because you want to say that there's nothing in this variable. So hopefully it doesn't confuse you more, but yeah.
So when we have the empty quotation marks, we could use null instead. Is that?
Yes, technically you could. We can use empty, or you could technically use null. Just make sure that you don't try to do any calls off of something that says null or undefined. What I mean by that is if I say my data type dot toString, and I think this will break. Let me see. If I try to run this kind of function off of an undefined, oh, I saw this error up here. Give me a second. You can, so if I try to do this off an undefined, it'll say cannot read property of toString of undefined. So remember, toString is a specific method or specific function for specific data types. So if you set it to null or set it to undefined, it's no longer a string. So any of those fun string functions that you want to use, such as trim, to uppercase, or anything like that, isn't accessible. Hence, you might get this error. So just be careful, is what I'm saying.
Are there any specific functions associated with undefined and null? Like, you know, in the same way we have string functions?
Nothing too fun, honestly. Undefined and nothing or null are just like black holes. Really, you can't do much with them. So the answer would be, at least to my knowledge, no. I have never had any helper functions on undefined or null. So yeah, I would say try to stick away from them. I don't believe I know of any. Yeah, that's actually an interesting question. Let's take a look at that on the side. But to answer your question, no, you typically will not. Awesome, that's a great question.
So what would be the application for undefined and null, like in a program basis?
Yeah, basically, so say I wanted to see if my if statement ran or something like that, and I have it set to undefined, such as in any application that you have to see if something has actually been assigned or not assigned, undefined or null is the best way to go. So I'm trying to think of a good quick example we can do here. But essentially, I want to check, say, I'm trying to think. If I want to say, like, okay, if my data type equals undefined, I would say console log, something went wrong. Because I should not be expecting it to be undefined. Maybe it was set above it. So what I'm saying is that you would want to use undefined and null to see if something has or has not been assigned some kind of value. Right now, in most of your assignments, you've been using empty strings to dictate that something has not been assigned, but undefined and null would be the more proper manner of doing so. So into the future, you're going to be doing more if statements to see if something is defined or is not defined and do something about that. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so it sounds like basically it's more for the, I don't know, maybe not programmer, but like user for like feedback, I guess, like a tool of sorts rather than kind of like really using it like in statements or to, you know, accomplish something in the program, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, it would be more of it's a more professional placeholder than just empty strings. So you're usually using it for an indicator more than to do something like you would a string or a number. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hop on here to lecture questions real quick. So, what's the difference between setting up code with null and just leaving the variable blank, or can you leave the variable blank? Technically, if you leave a variable blank, it is automatically by default set to undefined. If I remove this right here and I console logged my data type, my data type, it is actually by default set to null. Okay. So let's go and run that. If I see this, oh, did I still try to do it? I did. Oopsies. No, stop it. There we go, run that. And we see up here, we get undefined. Again, by default, JavaScript will set our variables that we don't assign it to anything automatically to undefined. Great question. All righty.
So what exactly would make it say null?
I'm sorry?
Would the console ever pop up and say null, or is it always undefined?
It would only say null if I put equals null here.
Gotcha.
Yep, just like that. Awesome. Great questions, everybody. All right, we got to move forward, though, just so we can get everything in before I let you go. So let's go ahead and all right. So I don't know why I keep muting you all. I want you to keep talking to me, of course, because we're going to do, oh, I already did this one. A quick checkup. All right, tell me, yell it at me, do whatever you need to, but what package do I need to require if I need to ask the user for input?
Readline sync.
Very good, awesome job. All right, continuing on. If I need to leave a function, which keyword do I use? If I need to get out of there.
Return.
Return.
Very good, return. Return will immediately get me out of there and take anything I have after the word return with it and return it from the function. Awesome, awesome. Which loop type will continue to run while a conditional is true?
While.
A while loop, very good. Remember, we put that conditional inside those parentheses and we'll keep looping until it is false. Did you know a polar bear has clear fur, but what color is their skin?
Black.
Green.
Oh, you all know too much. Black. It is
Black.
black.
Oh, it's
Very
true.
good.
That is true.
All right, last question. What percentage of the world's population makes mistakes?
100%.
Very good. 100% of people makes mistakes. Awesome job, everyone. Yes, that is absolutely true, which will lead us into our next conversation. We are all going to make mistakes. It is only natural. That's why I love pencils. And that is why we have errors to tell us what we did wrong. So what we're going to do is go over a few errors here and just talk about them. You have already been introduced to some errors, I'm sure. But I just want to take you all through them just so we can have some fun. So let's talk about the first one. We're going to talk about a reference error, which we've already seen tonight, actually. This reference error is when we're trying to call a variable or function that doesn't exist in that scope. That scope, that word is coming back up. That is exactly when we get a reference error. So if I come down here, and if I put my data type just simply below this console log, again, we're going sequentially here. When we come to line 58, my data type doesn't exist anywhere above it. It exists below it. That's not okay. We run this and we're going to get back a reference error. Cannot access my data type before initialized. That's one thing. If we don't even talk about my data type and we run it, we'll also get a reference error. Once again, it's not even defined. These are two big errors that we'll see throughout launch code and throughout our programming career. So get ready to see them. But just notice that a reference error with these kinds of errors means that something might be out of scope, might be out of sync, or just not, possibly even spelt wrong. You can get a reference error, something just spelt wrong. Let's hop back. Let's talk about another one, a syntax error. These are also fun ones. This is when we constructed some code wrong. So for example, a syntax error could easily occur if we were just trying to build a for loop. So we say for, say let I equal 0, I less than 10, and then I plus plus. Now this is a typical for loop, we did this right, but what happens if I just take out this simple little semicolon there and I run that? We're gonna get a syntax error, unexpected identifier. This means that we just constructed this for loop wrong, or maybe we constructed an if statement wrong or something like that. Always what we do for syntax errors, we look at that line number and we go right to it. 55, I see that, oops, I did forget that semicolon there. We run it, and now that syntax error, oh, no, we're back to that one. Why are you back to that one? Oh, the if statement's trying to do it. Reference error, just want to show you reference error once again. Run that, and now everything works properly. So syntax errors are when we just have maybe a small typo in one of our coding tools here. In this case, it was for the for loop. All right, last but absolutely not least, a type error. These are more new to us because this has to do with our data types. It's when we typically try calling a function that doesn't belong to that type. So we saw it today if we were trying to call my string on an undefined. So we run this. Oh, data type 2. I actually think it might work on a null. No, it can't. Ha. So this is a type error right here. We have a type error, cannot read property of toString of null. Again, that's when we're trying to call a helper function or a function here on a data type that it doesn't belong to. Again, what we do is we go to line 65. Here we see it in the error. Come down to 65. I see toString. I have to follow my code up. I see, oh no, I defined it as null. And 65 says toString doesn't exist. Well, I know that I can't call toString on this null, or I could change it from null to something that toString exists on. So I'm just going to put in empty quotes there, or I can even do a number. You run that again. And now I see that I can change my number, my data type, to a string using that .toString method. Look at that. So that is an example of a type error. So that is our third type of error that I wanted to go over tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and let everyone unmute. Anybody have any quick questions about those data types before we move into our last thing? I'm sure everyone is excited to see all those errors as always. All right, awesome. Remember, if you get those errors, the first thing you should always do, look up the line number. Look up that line number. It will help you out the most. It will at least tell you where exactly in your code it is breaking. Look up that line number and then see what kind of error it actually is and read that description. Over your months of practice, you will get to notice some common errors. So definitely take note of them and know exactly what you should do to fix them. Additionally, if you are reaching out to your TAs or TFs, I do recommend that you definitely include the entire error so they know exactly what you're talking about. So those are our errors. I see we got a question here. What's the 13 standing in the error? 13 is actually the character count here. So not only does it tell you the line, but it tells you the exact character where you anchored that compiler, where we anchored that compiler. So if we could do over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I see that right at that character, that's where everything broke. That is where the world ended. So 13 means the character count. All right. Awesome questions. Awesome questions. So let's move into our final thing. So we know how to make errors happen. Is everyone professional yet at making some errors happen? Everybody good at it? Raise your hand if you're good at it. No? Some people are like, nah. Oh yeah, I'm good at making errors happen all the time. So we know that we can make errors happen, but how can we exactly keep those errors from happening if we know they're going to happen, or just protect us so our entire application doesn't crash? Hence why I want to quickly introduce you to our friend here, try catches. Try catches is a type of coding tool that we can try to run code between the curly brackets of the try, and if anything breaks, it gets caught by the catch statement that we see below here. That EX that you see in the parentheses, that is an exception. It is an object full of information about what exactly went wrong when your catch statement was triggered. Again, what happens here is that inside that the try statement in the curly brackets of the try, we'll try to run code. If anything breaks, if any errors occur, that exception or that error will be caught in the catch statement, and then that code will be ran. So let's go ahead and see exactly an example. Say in the try catch statement, here I put let message equal hello, and then below it says message.toFixed is 2. If you're not familiar, .toFixed is a number-specific function that helps round it. So this should not work. So below in the catch statement, what I'm going to do is say, you're safe. I didn't actually break here, but here's the exception. Because remember, catches are going to keep us from breaking our application, but it will still hold the error that happened. So let's go ahead and see this in action. Let's go ahead and put this up here. So we said we're going to do this example here. So we said we're going to do, what does it say, message? Yeah, message. Message equals hello. And then we said message.toFixed. I'm going to just change that down here to fixed. So I'm going to show you real quick is just it breaking in general. So I'm going to take out that for loop up there. I'm going to run this and we're going to get that type error once again. Look at that. Message.toFixed is not a function. Liar. No, they're actually right, but whatever. So what we do to protect ourselves is we say try. We use that keyword try. And inside of these curly brackets, we put our code we want to try. Now, one question you might be asking yourself, we're going to put this catch statement here, but do we always need a catch statement? Yes, you always need a catch statement on a try statement. These always have to be partnered together. You always have to have your try, you always have to have your catch, and they have to be connected. Next down here, we said console log. We're going to say, you're safe. We didn't break, but something bad went, something horribly wrong went wrong. You're safe. There we go. And then I'm going to put EX. Again, EX is that exception, that error that happened, and it's going to have a lot of good information inside of it that we can read. So let's go ahead and run this now and see what happens. Awesome. So we didn't see we got red, but we did get white back because we're console logging this again. So it says you're safe, and it said type error, message.toFixed is not a function. So it also printed out that exception for us. So this broke, but our catch statement protected us from actually breaking our application. Now, why again would we use this? Well, say down here, we actually wanted to run more code. Hello again. What would happen if we didn't place this try catch around here? I'm gonna go ahead and comment this out because this is very important to see. If I just put this here outside of it, just for an example's sake, and I run this, we're gonna get that error, and it's gonna be red, and it's gonna immediately stop at this message.toFixed. Our application won't continue after the error. But if we put a try catch around it, something magical happens. Kind of magical. That's cool. We run that, and the error still happens, but our code continues to run. So it says hello again. So this try catch helped us from the world exploding on our application. So that's the power of these try catches. So let's go over here and just take a quick look at what exactly happened. So the try, we ran this, we went to message.toFixed, world exploded, we came down to the catch exception, and it printed out, you're safe, but here's the exception that happened. Fix this, something's wrong. So that is exactly what happened here. Let's go ahead and see what would happen if we remove that toFixed. So we just commented this out. Now no error should happen. We see we just get hello again. The catch statement does not trigger unless an error occurs. The catch statement does not trigger unless an error occurs. So that's what we just saw happen here. What it did is that it went right to the try catch and went right to the bottom. It said let message equals hello, it ended, it got out of there. So that's what happens with these try catches. And one more thing I want to introduce you to here real quick. Let me make sure that there's no questions on the channel. If you removed EX from the console log, we'll just print the message and not give the error. That is correct, Jason. So yes, if we removed EX from here and we uncommented this out, so the catch statement actually gets triggered and run that, we just see you're safe, hello again, because again, we're console logging that down there. Oop, apparently didn't do anything. There we go. So we run that. Awesome, great question. All right, one more thing I want to introduce you to is that we're going to put back this error here. I'm going to introduce you to one more thing, this finally block. Now, say we try something, it breaks, if we go into the catch statement, we want to do something after whatever our catch statement does to fix our error. If we want to do something at the very end, we include this keyword called finally. Finally runs after the try and catch block have, whether or not an exception occurred. So finally will always run. So if we come down here, let's see, console log, let's finish up. So we say finally, console log, let's finish up. Do that. We run this. We say, it says you're safe. So that means that this line 64 was triggered. But then we have let's finish up. Let's go ahead and comment this out once again, run that again. Excuse me. And it says let's finish up. So the finally block will always run. One thing I want to say here is that try and catch, again, have to always be together. But finally is optional. Finally is optional. So we do not always have to put that there. So wanted to include that in there as well. So that being said, let's go in here and we'll see our final thing. So what it did is that we say let message equals hello, message.toFixed, it breaks, it goes to the console log, like, okay, you're safe, here's the exception. And then after that's all finished, it goes to the finally block, runs that console log, and then it's done. So that being said, those are try catches. Again, want to quickly introduce you to that. For try catches too, if you're asking yourself, when should I exactly use this? Only use try catches when you know an error might actually occur. When I say might actually occur, this isn't meaning so you protect your code that you're trying to experiment with. This is more about things that you know are prone to errors. So this could be conversions or parsers. So if you're trying to convert a number to a string, say maybe you ask a user for their age, but maybe instead of providing their age, they accidentally provide their name, but you're trying to convert their name to a number, that's error prone. A lot of things that are error prone, again, are user inputs. So when you're using try catches, identify things that are error prone, user input, and that's what you should wrap try catches around, not experimental code or code that you're just trying out that you think might have a bug in it. I have a question here with finally, will the rest of your code still run? Yes, it will still run. Everything below the finally will still actually run. So we put this down here, we run this. Yep, and everything out of the side of that also runs. Great question, Katie. Why use finally when anything you put after the try catch block will run anyway? So what happens here is that in a catch, and I want to see if this actually, to answer that question properly, make sure this example works. Yeah. So what you typically do in a catch statement is that once you get an error, you typically use this keyword that I wasn't going to bring up tonight, but I will now, is throw. Throw is something that if we want to create an error, our own error saying that something went wrong, we would throw that error. This error then would be thrown outside the function and then it would break if it needs to break. So what happens here is that if we throw something in the catch, the finally statement still gets ran. So that's why we would use finally. I guess the best way to answer that question then, in the cases that you're using a throw inside that catch and you need something to happen regardless after that throwing, you would use the finally statement. Again, what throw does is it throws an error. So it throws your own custom error instead of whatever was being thrown in this exception. Awesome question. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and let you all unmute yourself too. Any final questions about any of the things that we covered today? Because we are right a little bit over time, but I want to get to anybody's question if there's any out there. Any questions at all?
So if you make something equal to undefined, I think you made equal to undefined, and then that was what the console printed.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you changed that to something else, would it print as something else?
So if you said my var equals undefined, and then we redefined my var?
Well, if you just changed my var to something other than undefined.
Oh, absolutely. So remember, console log will print out anything that is inside the value of our variable. So we say console.log and my var, it would print out something.
Okay.
If Replit wants to run. Maybe you won't. Okay, thanks, Replit.
Yeah.
Right at the end of class, as always. But yes, you what would happen there is that my var would print out with the value of something. So you'd see something on the console. Does that help out?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, any other final questions? All right, everyone. Well, in that case, thank you very much for sticking with me, as always. And I hope everyone. Oh, come on. Let's see what I can do here. Where's everybody's face? And there it is. All right, everyone, thank you very much. Hopefully everyone likes exceptions and the scopes and the primitives. These were all fun and interesting topics. Even though they were kind of smaller in size, they are still very important. So you are now free to go to your smaller groups. On that, I will see you all back here. I will see you back in St. Louis on Monday. So
You still
see
in
you all.
Florida?
Have a great weekend. I'm sorry?
You're still in Florida?
I am still in Florida. I am. I can't leave the sun. I'm not tan enough yet. All right. All right, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I will see everyone back on Monday.
All right,
Safe
Kyle.
travels
Thank you,
home,
bro.
Kyle.
See you, Kyle.
Thanks.